This episode will cover Hamlet, Act 3, Scene 1, lines 58 to 62. To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether 'tis nobler in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them. These first few lines begin the speech that is the greatest in the English language. Shakespeare lavished so much upon the prince. And throughout the entire play, Hamlet utters a famous quote every few minutes. It has become the Mona Lisa of literature, and the part every actor wants to play. But with it comes its challenges. One Hamlet told of how members of the audience mumble or speak the lines with him. And worst of all was when one lady spoke the entire to be or not to be speech just ahead of him. What fools these mortals be, right? But one can get lost in the theatricality of it all, or for what has become cliché to lose its meaning. So what is to be or not to be? What is the question? Hamlet is contemplating whether to live or die, to exist or not exist, to be or not to be. That is the question. In the soliloquy's first line, Shakespeare uses choice words to great effect. He draws out, even throbs, to be or not to be, creating a sense of suffering or unrelenting agony. It is more raw than to live or die, and the anguish is palpable. A string of monosyllables can be, if done correctly, very effective at revealing the inner self. One scholar writes of this, "It is an almost unbearable moment of full consciousness, too full consciousness," and of the soliloquy, its passionate broodings on death and the life hereafter. Called upon to avenge his father's murder, Hamlet is compelled to philosophize about problems of duty, morality, and ethics, which have been human concerns through the ages, all the while putting on an antic disposition or pretending to be mad. And he has baffled critics. Why is he so reluctant to act? Hamlet is an enigma, yet throughout the play he resists interrogation. What has he within? He says, "I have that within that passes show." For Nietzsche, however, there is no Hamlet mystery. The nimble-footed, madcap Prince of Denmark dafts the world aside and bids it pass, because he has looked truly into the essence of things. Goethe hinted that within, Hamlet has the soul of a poet, too sensitive, delicate, and complex to endure the cruel pressures of a coarse world. Compared with the revenger from the traditional blood and guts drama, much in vogue during the late Elizabethan era, Hamlet does appear weak. But he is a brave thinker, and ultimately his philosophizing to the point that there's a divinity that shapes our ends, rough hew them how we will, does manage in one way or another to kill almost everyone in the play. In other words, it is fate that brings about revenge. His mighty force, like Nietzsche's, is that of a conscience conjured against everything that has been believed, demanded, and hallowed so far. He is asking the question of life or death in a time dominated by Christendom, when suicide was forbidden by God. In Act 1, Scene 2, Hamlet speaks, "Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt, thaw, and resolve itself into a dew, or that the everlasting had not fixed his cannon against self-slaughter." And in Shakespeare's England, those bodies who sinned against God were given desecrated burials, placed north-south instead of east-west, and at a crossroads to baffle the spirit. A stake was also driven through the heart. Shakespeare, like Nietzsche, does not see ideals here, but what is human, all too human. He loosened the coil of the medieval world because he knows no bounds. And he frees himself to discover what truths there are based solely on the foundations of reason. In a way, he ushers in the era of the modern world. Perhaps his boldness comes from Shakespeare's own father, who whitewashed their chapel during the Protestant Reformation. Did Shakespeare want his own son, whom he named Hamlet, to take it all further? As the Protestant Reformation destabilized 1,000 years of English Christianity, and in a mere 20 years, Hamlet's question of life or death does this in the breathing space of a single speech. Hamlet asks this question because he is a poet, an intellectual, and a philosopher, and ever since he has been greatly admired for it. Coleridge said, "I have a smack of Hamlet myself, if I may say so." And Lord Byron said, "We love Hamlet as we love ourselves." His capacious intellect and extreme self-consciousness was Shakespeare's innovation, and Hamlet's intelligence makes him see both sides of every question. And when it comes to the question of life or death, he sees what is central to this, whether it is noble to suffer or to end suffering.